everyone, my name's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one that I honestly have been meaning to do for a while now. I feel like I have been in a little bit of a reading slump, not in terms of like the amount of books I've been reading, but it feels like in terms of like the books I want to read. Once I get like 60% into them, I'm like so done and I just want them to be over. Or I've been having a hard time like getting into the mindset of wanting to settle down and read for a while. So I thought I could try and like really put my nose to the grindstone in this video and make myself read for 100 pages a day to finally get into a lot of the books I've wanted to read and finish them sooner rather than later. I think under normal circumstances, I usually read between 40 to 80 pages a day, which usually means I'm finishing around a book a week. I also wanted to film this video in the summer because I work from home once a week during the summertime, so I'll have a little bit more free time to update you during the process instead of just giving you a big summary at the end of the week. I'm currently starting this on a Saturday, so I thought we could go through and talk about my TBR. So the first book I want to read, I actually just started yesterday, and that is The Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel by KJ Charles. This is the second book in the Doomsday Clan series. The first book in the series, The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen, I read during my reading queer historical romances reading vlog. And a couple people in the comments mentioned that I should read the sequel and that they liked that one actually more than the first book in the series. So I decided to check it out. I have both the audiobook from Hoopla as well as the copy from my library. And so far I've only listened to the first 50 pages with the audiobook. And this is a gay historical romance set in 1823. So it's set 13 years in the future from the first book in the series. And one of the characters in the romance is this guy, Luke Doomsday, who is one of the cousins of one of the main characters in the previous book. In the previous book, he's only 13, but obviously 13 years later, he is now 26. And he's going to be working as a secretary for this new earl that's come on the marsh. I'm super excited to get into this book and see what people really like about it. I actually don't know how much time today I'm going to have for reading because in like an hour I have to leave to go to our friend's birthday party. But hopefully between the hour I have right now and then before I go to bed, I'll be able to make up my first 100 pages for this video. So I think I'm going to end the intro here and then I will come back to you tomorrow when I have my first update. Okay, so it is now the next day, so I thought I would give you my next update for everything I've been reading. I have made a ton of progress in reading Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel. I'm currently at page 222, so I did hit my goal of reading 100 pages yesterday, and since then I've read another 64 pages today. Like I just said, I'm at page 222, which is the start of chapter 17. And I feel like I've been flying through this book because I have been really enjoying it. I realized I didn't give you a full summary about what this book is about, so let's go ahead and start off by talking about that. Like I said, this is a gay historical romance set in 1823. The first of our main characters is Rufus Domesday. He was a soldier in the Napoleonic Wars, but has since learned that his kind of deadbeat, good-for-nothing father who had abandoned him and his mother actually was the son of an earl. And now that both his father and his grandfather are dead, the earldom has actually passed down to him, which if you've read like any other KJ Charles is such a classic setup for her. If I can find the Tumblr post, I'll definitely insert it here. But it goes something like, in the KJ Charles novel, which one of you is the unwilling nobleman and which one of you is the streetwise commoner that falls in love with him? Because it seems like at least all of the KJ Charles books I have read, the like nobleman character is someone that has been like really thrust into their role as opposed to someone that's brought up expecting to inherit a title. Anyway, now that Rufus is the new earl, he finds out that the estate has been really poorly run from the last couple of generations, as well as the fact that his father's younger brother expected that he was going to inherit, so he's very much at odds with his uncle and their side of the family. To kind of get everything up and running, and through a kind of strange series of circumstances, Rufus ends up connecting with the other main male character, who is Luke Doomsday, who he ends up hiring to be his secretary. Luke is a character we've met in the previous book, who is the younger cousin of Joss Doomsday, who's the main character in The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen. Like I mentioned before, in that book he's a 13-year-old, but now it's 13 years later and he's a young man. Luke is also at the Earl's estate for some type of ulterior motive, and I have since read through kind of the reveal of what that motive was and the third act breakup that it caused. But actually, at the point I'm at right now, they basically just healed from the third act breakup. So I'm interested in seeing what like the last third of this book will hold. I am really enjoying this book. I really like the dynamic of the two main characters. I feel like it was not necessarily a slow burn, but it did take like a full third of the book for them to act on their feelings, which was definitely not how it felt for the previous book in the series. I also enjoy some of the cameo scenes that we've had so far, seeing Gareth and Joss, and kind of like the development of all of the side characters since the previous book. And I also really feel like this book is filling a gap in one of the plot points from the previous book. Like, when I finished the previous book, I think one of the things that I had felt was like a sense of, oh, this really feels like this is missing this one part. I'm surprised they're not developing this more. And that basically comes back around to be one of the main plot points in this book. So I don't know if that was necessarily KJ Charles's plan when she was mapping out the two books, but I'm glad that that element is getting like reassessed and discussed in this one. But yes, overall, I'm really enjoying this book. Since I've read around 65 pages today, I only technically have to read 35 more to get to my 100 for the day, which means technically I don't have to finish this book today. I think I'm just going to keep reading and see how far I get. I don't have a ton of plans for today. Later on, we might go out for a Pokemon Go walk and also go to the pool, but I can definitely do some reading at the pool as well. But that's my update for so far, and I'll probably come back to you in 2 or 3 days when I have more updates. So, I know this is a weird angle. I'm actually recording using my laptop's camera because I didn't really feel the need to get out my whole camera setup right now. But it's Tuesday and I got done working from home, so I thought I would give you another update for my reading so far. Over the last 2 days, I have finished the Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel, and I really liked this. I thought it was so cute. I really loved the final confrontation and all of like the drama and like the action adventure energy that it was bringing. I also really liked the main couple and all of like the side characters in this book. I really like Rufus and him initially like really disliking his kind of like extended family. But then over the course of the book, he ends up connecting with each of his cousins and slowly helping them realize just how shitty their parents are. And then him bonding with each of them and helping them realize just like how terribly they had been treated by their parents. And there was a lot of really good character development in just showing like how much Luke has been impacted by all the stuff that happened in the previous book and how he's like grown and changed and just like the trauma that he went through and how with the help of Rufus at his side, he's now able to sort of like move past that element of his history. I really like this. I think I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. I also really liked the main romance in this book. I thought the two of them were so cute together. I really like the way that Rufus will call Luke like different versions of my Doomsday. He calls him my apocalypse, my end of days. It's so romantic. I also really loved all of the cameos with Joss and Gareth. I thought they were so good, and I really liked seeing them again. And kind of like all of the side characters from the previous book showing up again was really fun. Honestly, since reading this, I am like, ooh, maybe I should go back and read the previous book in this series again. Because I feel like now that I like know the characters and like the setting, I feel like I would definitely get a lot out of it if I tried and read the first one again. And I really hope that KJ Charles does write more in this series, because I definitely could see like other characters getting their romances. One of Rufus's cousins is Berengaria, and she has a lady's maid named Emily who's part of the Doomsday family. And I don't know, I feel like there was a little bit of vibes going off between the two of them. And I'm pretty sure KJ Charles does also write lesbian historical romances, so I'd like to put that out into the universe as an option for her to write in the future. This also makes me just want to read more of KJ Charles's backlist. I do think there's other books of hers that were recommended to me in that previous historical romance reading vlog, so I definitely will check out more of her books in the future. At the very least, I know I'm going to be continuing on with the Charm of Magpie series, since I want to read the third book in that series, as well as some of the other ones that like take place in the same universe. So yes, yesterday I read the 69 pages to finish this off. And then with the remaining page count to get up to my 100 pages, I decided to start a new book. At first I was considering reading another physical book in my like July TBR, but I was just in like another like queer historical romance mood. So I decided to pick up The Ruin of a Rake by Cat Sebastian. This book I'm listening to as an audiobook through Hoopla, and I'm only currently 13% of the way through, which I think equates to around like 46 pages of the like physical book. I've read one other of Cat Sebastian's books, which was The Queer Principles of Kit Webb, and I did like that, but wasn't like obsessed with the main couple in it. But I do like her writing style. I also know she's one of like the other like pillars of like the queer historical romance subgenre. And of all of her backlist, this was one of the ones that seemed the most up my alley. This book follows our main character, Lord Courtney, who is the quintessential rogue, rake, like just like social pariah in all different ways. And he is friends with this woman named Eleanor, and Eleanor is trying to help Courtney kind of like rehabilitate his image because Courtney is trying to kind of like, I guess, gain custody of his nephew. Courtney had been taking care of his younger sister and her son, but when his sister died, his nephew was sent back to his legal father, and the legal father is basically like thinking Courtney is such a terrible influence that he's not allowed to see his nephew anymore. And Eleanor is helping Courtney out by introducing him to her younger brother, Julian, who is a very like straight-laced, very, very by the book, kind of like snooty young man who is hoping to mold Courtney into the perfect English gentleman. Like I said before, I'm only like 13% of the way through, but this book is something. It's definitely a lot more smutty than I initially had anticipated. But I definitely like see the vision of where things are going to go. Normally, Julian is the type of character I really like. If you've been on my channel before, I really like a very like by the book, mild-mannered, like straightforward type of character. Julian's definitely a little bit more annoying and like kind of full of himself than I usually go for. But overall, I see what Cat Sebastian is going for in their dynamic. Very much like opposites attract, enemies to lovers type vibes between the two of them. So I'm interested in seeing like how their relationship develops and just overall what the rest of this book is going to be like. Also, I might have one of the two covers up on the screen right now, either like the print cover or the like audiobook version. And both of them are a little ugly. I do like overall like the vibes of like a lot of Cat Sebastian's covers. Very much that quintessential early romance, like clinch cover design. But at the same time, it's not 100% my vibe. I don't really like having real people on the covers of my books, so it's not necessarily a book I probably would go out of my way to own. Anyway, that all being said, I am going to start reading for the rest of the day. Probably by the time I do my next update, I might even be done with this book. So I'll give you like my full thoughts on it once I complete it in the next couple days. Okay, so it is now Saturday, and I have completed my full week of reading for 100 pages a day. I thought I would give you my final update for A Ruin of a Rake because I did finish this book on Friday. I was not expecting to like this as much as I did in the end. At first I was like, okay, I feel like they're being a little too horny for each other in a way that like didn't really feel earned, because there wasn't a lot of like upfront depth, or so I thought. But as we got into the story more and learned about each of the characters' personalities and backstories, and also being able to see how they like work well as a team and got along, not in just like a sexy way, it's actually like really good. Actually, my brain kind of went from like the 30% mark of thinking, okay, they are kind of cute, to at the 50% mark being like, oh my god, they are so in love and they're both just like such idiots that can't communicate their feelings. And then finally by the end being like, ugh, I'm so obsessed with them. Also, this book probably has one of the most understandable third act breakups I've read, at least recently, of like, oh yeah, King, you did kind of cause like every problem for your man, that it's understandable that he's mad with you. I also, since reading this book, have kind of realized that this is the third book in a series. I sort of knew that ahead of time, but I didn't know how much of like a connection the rest of the series had to this one. And from reading this book, I have learned that a lot of the side characters that appear in this book are main characters in the other books in the series. And I definitely am going to be reading the previous two books in this series. I actually already checked out the second book, which is the one that comes directly before this from the library already. So that's probably a book I will read sometime next month. I think I also mentioned this before, but I feel like maybe I do need to do a reread of The Queer Principles of Kit Webb, because I definitely didn't hate that book, but I do think it maybe is not as strong as this one. But I feel like I do need to do a reread to like fully dive back in and get like a better understanding of those characters again before I make a full judgment. But regardless, I'm going to give this book 4 stars. This might end up being moved to like a 4.5 stars if the characters kind of stay in my brain for a long time. But on like just first impressions, I think it's going to stay at 4 stars for now. So now that the week is over, let's go through and talk about how many pages I read each day. For exactly a week ago on Saturday, I read 100 pages of The Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel. I continued to read that on Sunday, another 109 pages. And then on Monday, I read 112 pages, which was finishing this book as well as starting A Ruin of a Rake. On Tuesday, I read another 100 pages. And then on Wednesday, I only ended up reading 30 pages. We went to the beach on this day, And the book I ended up bringing for that is actually a nonfiction book that I've been reading, which is this one, which is Plastic Fantastic by Eugenie Samuel Reich. This also was a book I was reading kind of off and on throughout the course of the week, just like a couple pages here and there. On Thursday, I really made up for my lack of reading on Wednesday, and I read 154 pages. And then lastly, on Friday, I read another 50 pages, which finished off A Ruin of a Rake. I was considering starting another book on Friday, just to get like the other 50 pages started into a new book. But I thought for the sake of this vlog, kind of like ending it off having finished 2 books, that would make a little bit more sense, and I was getting a little bit burned out. I think I know what the next book I'm going to read is, but I definitely like really mood read my way through the other books in this vlog, and I wanted to have a little bit of space to make like a good decision on what my next book is going to be. This is the second time I've done this challenge, and I really do like it because I like having that set page goal to push me to read more each day. Since usually with like the kind of flow that I have in my week, I tend to do most of my readings on the weekend or during the week when I'm commuting to and from work. But with this, I definitely was reading a lot more in like the evenings and right before bed, and just dedicating a little bit more of my free time to reading. It also helped that 2 of the books that I was reading I also had as audiobooks, so I had the option to listen to them while I was on my commutes. Having that audiobook option obviously pushes me to get through reading a lot faster because I can turn more just like ambient hanging around time into reading time. And another thing I feel like I've learned, which is kind of obvious, is that it's way easier to read a ton of books when you're really enjoying what you are reading. I definitely feel like I flew through the 2 historical romances that I read because that's a genre I've really enjoyed. With my nonfiction, I'm definitely going at that at a slower pace, not because I'm not enjoying the content, but just because it being a nonfiction is a lot more dense and requires a lot more brain power, so it is slightly less of an enjoyable reading experience. And I do feel like when it comes to other books I've read in the past, I just find that I really drag my feet when I'm reading a book that I'm not super enjoying, whereas obviously a book that I like, I can't wait to pick up again. So I'm really glad that the books I ended up choosing to read during this vlog were books that I ended up really liking. Otherwise, I would have struggled a lot more in doing this challenge. But with that all said and done, that is the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. If you'd like to see me do more specific reading challenges, I'd love to see your recommendations down in the comments. If you'd like to see what my reading updates in real time are, you can follow me on the story graph, which is linked in the description. And that is going to be it from me today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!